session is one of a series on urban challenges organized jointly by the Enriching Brazil project and the Joint Programming Initiative Urban Europe. The webinar series aims at discussing urban challenges and fields for actions to support urban transitions towards a more sustainable and livable future. And we also would like to shed a light on the methods how to get to this future. In each webinar, we will be hearing interesting cases from Brazil and Europe and exchange on what can be learned from a EU-Brazilian cooperation. I can hear myself right now.
Johannes, you're mute.
Sorry for that. I had a YouTube link open so I could hear myself talking at some point, which was very distracting. So sorry for that. So we would like to, with this webinar series, we would like to hear interesting cases from Brazil and Europe and exchange on what can be learned from EU-Brazilian cooperation and how do we get things going and facilitate the exchange of knowledge, experience, and innovation. As I said, my name is Johannes Riegler. I'm an urbanist and geographer. I work with the management board of the Joint Programming Initiative Urban Europe here in Vienna, Austria. And with that, I would give the floor to Berna Winischbauer from the Enrich in Brazil project. Berna is working for the Austrian Research Promotion Agency and will give welcome from the project and introduce the Enrich in Brazil project.
Okay, I hope you can hear me. Perfect, perfect. Hello, good morning to Brazil, good afternoon to the European continent or wherever you are. My name is Berna Winischbauer. I'm representing the Enrich in Brazil initiative, which is one of the organizers of today's event. Let me go to the presentation mode. I hope then you can see it better. What is Enrich in Brazil? For those who haven't heard yet, it is established actually as a network, as an initiative funded by the European Commission Horizon 2020 program for research innovation. However, last year it turned into an association established in Brazil by European and Brazilian organizations active in the science and technology and innovation fields. So the main objective of our network is to facilitate cooperation among European and Brazilian research, innovation, and business organizations. Oops. Sorry, it's jumped a bit. Yeah, there we are. So, as I said, it is an initiative funded partly by the Horizon 2020 program, and it is part of a global network of centers and hubs that promote internationalization of STI activities. Currently, there are 3 Enrich centers focusing on Brazil, USA, and China. But as of next year, it will be followed by India and South Africa. So the Enrich centers established India and South Africa to support bilateral cooperation between Europe and these countries. The Enrich in Brazil duration, well, we're coming to the end of this project. Today is actually, this month is actually our last month. However, it will continue in a wider scope, which I will come in a minute. So as you see here, we have a number of partners, 4 partners from Brazil, namely Confab, CNI, ANPEI, and Unicamp, and 8 partners from various European countries representing different STI actors ranging from funding organization, university, private companies, and networks. For some reason it keeps jumping. Oh no, we're here. It's not jumping. So as I said, as of next year, we are going to expand our scope to cover further Latin American countries, starting from 2021 till 23. And currently, we have selected the following thematic areas: the health, digital transformation, bioeconomy, and sustainable development. And open innovation can be considered as one of the cross-cutting priority area. However, these priorities are not carved in stone, so depending on the needs and interests of both regions, we will be updating new priorities and new scopes. And what do we do in terms of programs and activities? Capacity building activities, ranging from executive education to researcher trainings, networking activities, solutions, funding and matchmaking activities, as well as soft landing hubs for those who would like to expand their business operations to Latin America or Europe. This Urban Challenges webinar series was established this year to be able to offer a platform to exchange ideas and experiences and promote learning from each other and support new Europe-Brazil collaboration towards finding solutions in the form of a product, service, business model, technology, or processes. We have selected 4 topics initially. First one being the positive energy districts, which we have organized our first webinar during the AMPE conference last month. This will be accessible from YouTube. We will share the links afterwards. Today is the topic Urban Living Labs. We're organizing today's webinar. In 2021, we will continue with 2 fixed topics. The first one would be the food, water, energy nexus, and the 4th one will be the circular economy. By saying that, I would like to thank you for your interest, and please stay in touch with Enriching Brazil and contact us if you have any further questions or inquiries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Berna. So I'm personally very excited today about this topic and this discussion which we are going to have. So in general, for a number of reasons. So in general, there's much to learn, I feel, from sharing experiences between Europe and Brazil. We see that the challenges regarding sustainable and livable urbanizations are, I wouldn't say similar, but in somehow likewise. There's likewise topics in there which needs addressing. However, the urban context, or due to the urban context, these challenges, the concrete challenges, are then very, very different in how they appear. So for that reason, we in JPI Urban Europe would also like to continue this discussion and this cooperation with the Brazilian partners and friends in the future. And for that, these exchanges are very valuable. So for this topic on urban living labs and for this issue of experimental methods for developing urban transition pathways, we have seen in previous discussions, among them a workshop which JPI Urban Europe organized with FINEP 2 years ago, that there is a growing interest in experimental approaches in Europe and in Brazil. And urban living labs have gained a lot of traction in Europe over the last years, but as we will find out today, there is also very innovative, co-creative initiatives and projects happening in Brazil. And we will touch up on that today. We have a very interesting panel, very interesting speakers today, which are going to introduce now. So first of all, we have Jonas Bylund, a colleague from JPI Urban Europe, who's responsible for science policy cooperation. We have Elena Maranghi, who's working at the Politecnico di Milano. Marcus Rocha, I hope I pronounced it correctly, Marcus is the head of science, technology, and innovation of Florianopolis City Hall in Brazil. And we have Tatiana Schreiner, who works for the superintendency, it's a hard word to pronounce, of development of Florianopolis metropolitan area, also located in southern Brazil. So as it's very hard to get a feeling of who's participating and what all of your opinions and experiences are, we prepared something. We prepared, I will share that with you now. You should see that on your screen. We prepared a Mentimeter poll, which you can just answer in the background while listening into these presentations. For doing so, please just grab your phone or open a new browser window on your computer, go to menti.com and enter the code, which you can see here, which is 5482132. And then you have, I think 3, 4, 5 questions maybe, and the latest one, the last one there, you can comment on the panel and ask questions and so on. If there's enough answers, we will come back to that and feed that into our sessions. Again, please go to menti.com and type in the code, and that will help us getting a feel who's actually participating in this webinar. So, one second. It's always a bit of a puzzle here on what the computer does once you open a window and close a window. Okay, here we go again. So up next, the first presentation would be from Jonas, who will introduce to us the Urban Living Lab methodology, or these approaches rather, the methodology, and see what the whole fuss is actually about. Jonas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me, for having us. Thanks, Enrich, for this opportunity, and thank you in advance to the rest of the presentators, because this seems like a really interesting program today. I may not fully kind of give a methodological presentation of urban living labs as such. I thought I'd more kind of outline why we think that they're very needed. And I'm sorry, because if I share my screen or my PowerPoint, I guess as usual I can't really use it in full screen, so bear with me. I thought I'd be able to do some. Maybe I can. Do you see it in full screen now?
We see it in full. We see it with a preview on the right side.
Oh man, sorry.
The first view was better.
Yeah. So let's do it like this. This is the first screen, actually. So right, Jonas Bylund, and I work with kind of the also thematic aspects when it comes to, let's say, the urbanness in our programming environment, as well as doing kind of science policy or other kind of strategic networking things. So first of all, just a quick glance at JPA Urban Europe, and if you can read this. Maybe PowerPoints will be shared later on, so you can zoom in and look at it if you can't read it. But the joint programming initiative Urban Europe is it's actually at the core a collaboration between countries, programming agencies or public funders, etc. So that is what we do mainly. We have more than 20 countries. I guess it's actually 21 countries as full members as of last week. And of course, several funding agencies, but we're not restricted to Europe. Actually, we are quite open, and we can take on board any funding agency, public funding agency around the world, actually, in principle. It was interesting to note that the ENRICH is also interested in positive energy districts. We do that as a kind of a part or sub-program at the moment, and we will develop that even more in the next 7 years in the European kind of research and innovation framework. We're doing a partnership driving urban transitions towards sustainable futures. Now, if we can look at the figures around how much budget we've spent, or how many calls, how many projects, etc. But what is interesting is perhaps also this aspect here around the Agora, which is more than just research innovation calls that we do in the program, which is more about, let's say, co-creating, really listening closely to how different stakeholders, different actors perceive and experience challenges that they have, and also paths to sustainability that we try to deduce from that. And that is quite important for us, these kinds of getting close to stakeholders, engaging in some different ways. And there's also a way of doing that. There's perhaps also highlighting what projects are actually doing is by the urban lunch talks. So keep an eye out on them, for them. We've also done training sessions at conference sessions and also online lately, which I'm sure also Johannes can talk a lot more about how we do that. So 10 minutes, it's not much time. So I thought about, there is a kind of a core aspect to co-creation and the kind of transdisciplinary approach that JPI Urban Europe works with when it comes to being challenge-driven. One of these is, of course, it's kind of difficult in the urban environment, the urban setting, the urban context all around the world, but especially in Europe, where we see kind of an increased fragmentation or complexity in terms of how these systems, how these ecosystems actually work. And it's becoming quite tricky combining, synthesizing even, or integrating knowledge from different, let's say, sectoral learnings, sectoral knowledge, sectoral imaginaries, etc., ways of doing things. Now, we also then know by now that the kind of linear research and innovation models, where you go from basic science over applied science to innovation, and then you have a solution and you kind of plug and play it into an urban context, and well, problem fixed. That doesn't really work, or it rarely works, right? So at least when we're tackling kind of grander and more wicked societal challenges. And what we see is perhaps also, to add to the reasons why urban neighboring labs are so important, is that any kind of policy, any intention of trying to do something will always be on a hypothesis. And as you can see in the figure here, what we usually do when we try to shape solutions or try to invent things, processes, services, is that we take kind of the problem aside, we simplify it quite a bit, and then we work with it, find a solution, and then we're trying to put it back into the context, the society at large, where it's supposed to fix something. And usually that actually starts a new kind of situation of problem solving, of challenges, externalities, as the environmental studies has it, more or less. And these externalities, of course, can be positive or negative, but it's only one of these that are probably the kind of the desired transition or the desired change, and you also have lots of other kinds of effects going on. So the kind of here's the basic idea for urban living labs, as we see it, is why make this detour when you probably need to do a lot more of experimental work right here, right in the kind of everyday life situations where the problems are actually manifest. Work with that directly. Of course, this has its pros and cons. And we shouldn't forget kind of the effects, the positives of also having kind of bringing things back to the secluded laboratories. But we are quite adamantly supporting these kinds of experimentation, since it's simply there's probably too much lost in translation here, as you can see, right? So that's one thing. Oh yeah, I can't do that. And that's basically why. Then urban living labs can of course be very different. Mostly they are place-based, but they may also be networked in cities or across cities and urban regions, urban areas. In JP Urban Europe, we've funded more than 52 urban living labs so far now. And as you can see that if you look at the keywords in the third bullet, there's quite a broad variation of kind of topical issues that they are working on or have been working on, challenges addressed, etc. And that's kind of the strength of this approach, in which you can actually, of course, use many different types of co-design, co-creative, co-productive, collaborative, participatory methods. It depends, I would say, most of the times it depends a lot also on the issue that you want to tackle and what kind of methodology you actually pin down, so to speak. Which also means that urban living labs are very much developing. It's a field of kind of bustling activity, but also of theorization in terms of reflections on how are they working and what directions shall we take them on in the future. So some of the, well, a small selection of the projects that we have funded so far is, well, Smarter Labs, that has, I think it is 10 recommendations and other kinds of tips and tricks for doing urban living labs and these kinds of co-creative approaches. There's also the GUST, Governance of Urban Sustainability Transitions, who worked more on a typology of different urban living labs and tried to reflect and bring together different ways of how urban living labs has been doing and kind of where we need to go with this approach. But there's also Urb at Exp, which has this marvelous lab kit that we actually have been using a simplified version in conference sessions, because it takes about a day or so to play through, to simulate how you start and how you kind of continue and work with legacy issues from an urban living lab. So that's quite useful. Now, some of the current challenges that we have seen and that we are trying now to see how we can work with, how we can support urban living labs to tackle, of course, equity and inclusiveness. Who's included, who's excluded, etc. These are quite pertinent issues in urban living labs as well. And it's also the kind of how you then move from, let's say, a local urban living lab working in a neighborhood or a couple of blocks perhaps, or something, or a park, or an interesting provisional space in a building, etc. How do you move the kind of insights and learnings? How do you translate it into kind of a normal everyday urban governance situation, including kind of public administration, regulation and planning, etc. That's kind of an tricky thing, because not infrequently, at least in Europe, many times you say that we have also local urban governance taking part in these urban living labs, at least. And they're also the ones who really desires to kind of push the envelope and build, let's say, innovation capacities in the public sector in order to be able to tackle current issues around climate crisis or whatever. Right? So that's kind of where we are at the moment in our heads, in a way. There are also questions around the design of urban living labs, the longer term assessments, and of course, how do you compare different urban living labs? Since they are very place-based, developed, so to speak, issue-oriented, if you will, it also means that it's sometimes a bit tricky to compare and look at the kind of agglomerated learning or kind of wider synthesis of these approaches. There's also issues around how do we make it more long-term. Many times the typical 3-year cycle of projects that we have most of the time simply isn't enough to shape the kinds of impact that you can glance, that you can have a glimpse of in these urban living labs. And I'm not sure if you're hearing this, but there's also demonstration on the streets outside my office with some music. Now, we also think a lot about what kinds of impact and especially what kinds of impact do we want urban living labs to have to reshape our understanding of urban transitions. Perhaps they could be used to that. They could also drive it. But there might also, again, be the kind of place-based issues involved and how you look at it from a kind of larger perspective. And I leave it at that, as I hope it was more of a quick run through outline of why we find urban living labs so important as an approach, rather than a methodological introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jonas. Also, thanks for letting us listen into Swedish democracy, so to say, with the insight into the demonstration. We heard it very well. Thank you. I just wanted to show you one thing which Jonas mentioned, that is the lab kit by the Urban X project, which is very nicely made. So whoever is interested in developing an urban living lab, this lab kit guides you or asks all the essential questions and let you develop your urban living lab within a day of a workshop. So send me an email if you're interested into that. Before we go into our cases, so Jonas presented a more theoretical outline or the framework for urban living labs. Before we go into the cases, I would like to share again my screen and encourage everybody who's listening in to go to menti.com and type in this code 5482132 and answer a couple of questions. We already have a couple of responses which are very interesting, and we will touch up on them later again. Let's just give you a little teaser. So you will be asked, what could if you could change anything in your city, town, what would it be? So we already have some interesting responses to that. Please keep them coming. It helps us to get a feeling, so to say, who's participating and what your interests are and where you see your focus. So with that, I would like to go over to the first case or the first hands-on presentation. I would like to give the floor to you, Elena Maranghi, who's working at the Politecnico di Milano. And Elena will give us an insight into the urban living labs in the Solap Project. It's a project funded by the JPI Urban Europe. And Solap used or applied urban living labs in Brussels, Milan, and Paris. Elena, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will share my screen. Just 1 second. Okay. So good afternoon, and first of all, I would really like to thank the organizer for this invitation, because gives me the chance of speaking about the Solap Project, which is a project that it's ending this month. And so it's going to be concluded, and it's a 3-year project that was developed between 2017 and 2020. And as was said before, it involves as research partners, so the promoters of this project, the University of Brussels, which was the leading partner, the University of Paris-La-Villette, and Politecnico of Milan. So first of all, I will very briefly introduce the project structure and our main goals, and then I will try to make some reflections regarding the results of the project, and especially how we intended the Urban Living Lab in our experience. So first of all, as you can see in the title, of course, the focus of the Solap project was very much on the regeneration of large-scale social housing estates, so a quite precise focus on what urban context, which is very relevant in our European cities. And as researchers, so as the promoters of this project, we had, even if coming from very different cities, because of course Brussels, Milan, and Paris are 3 different cities, we shared these core questions regarding how to involve more effectively the different social actors, especially the less represented ones, in processes of urban regeneration of large-scale social housing estates. Because we saw that was this big gap and this big problem and a kind of failure, let's say, of participatory processes that in the last decades tried to deal with the participation of, especially of inhabitants, but of also different social actors in the regeneration of these areas. And for many different reasons that I don't have time to refer to deeply now, but this was a shared challenge that we considered from the beginning of the project. And we also shared the feeling that in these areas there was a widespread sense of that change was impossible. And in this sense, it's really interesting to refer to the concept also of transition, and as Jonas mentioned before, the fact that change, this concept of change, was really felt as something that could never happen in these places, especially related to a certain lack of knowledge concerning these areas that regards, first of all, the institutional framework, because maybe we know everything about the build stock, but sometimes there is a lack of knowledge concerning the social practices, the ways in which these places are used, and so on, and aspects that are really, really important if we consider the processes of urban regeneration that, of course, are not just physical, but also tackle and include the social, economical, and cultural aspects. So urban living labs, on our point of view, were seen as promising in terms of promoting this cycle of co-learning, co-designing, and co-creation in these areas, which really helped us to put together a kind of reflection and research, and also a kind of action in the field, because during the project we developed theoretical research, of course, but then the pilot project, which helped us in this kind of cycle to also go through the different aspects of urban regeneration in these areas. So the project framework was including these 3 different cities, so Paris, Milan, and Brussels, with existing living labs and new living labs that were developed. So it was really interesting also to have this kind of exchange on the different levels and steps in which these urban living labs were. And it was really important for us that the project gave us the chance of building and articulated local partnerships, which helped us to involve not only, of course, universities and agency related to research, but also institutions and local partners, such as the local associations and so on. And this was very important because, of course, when we talk about urban regeneration, we have to consider all the participation, the active participation of all these different actors. I will very briefly go to 3 points that I think are quite relevant to our experience. So first of all, for us, the Living Lab was very much about establishing a place, which doesn't have to be necessarily a physical place, even if, for instance, in our case in Milan, it was a physical place that we had already developed in the years before and that we are still developing today, but as a perspective and a set of relationship really rooted in the context in which we are working. So for us, cultivating a daily relationship with the neighborhood and giving values to informal relationship per se was really a core aspect of the co-learning process, which was made possible by developing these different methodologies such as the ethnographic survey, but also, as I was mentioning, the fact of simply being in the field and really establishing a day-to-day relationship with all the different actors. And this, of course, was also a way to access some kind of knowledge, as I was mentioning before, which is not so much accessible if you're not on the field and you're not investigating relational aspects. Coming to the second point, when the Urban Living Lab was really useful for us when we developed the project, because basing on this methodology, we really gave an important space to co-learning and co-design as a process of empowering local actors. I was mentioning, of course, local actors as associations, inhabitants, and so on, but it's really important to focus also on institutions. Indeed, for us, it was developing the Living Lab and the co-learning and co-design process was also a lot about involving institutions. Of course, local institution, it's easier to involve local institution, but just to be clear that it was also directed to that field. And our role was very much about activating and enhancing these different competencies and expertises in concrete pilot projects, and acting a little bit as brokers, so in the sense of translating the different languages of these different social worlds that were meeting in the Urban Living Lab. It's really important, and I will come then to the last point, it's really important this aspect of translating and so somehow activating the competencies and expertise by doing something together. And then I come to the last point, that is the one of co-creation. So really doing something together, so developing a pilot project, it's really a way in which these different kind of knowledge and also expertises and ways of doing things really they manifest themselves, let's say, in a clearer way, so it's also easier to then produce some kind of translation and communication among these different worlds. So talking about co-creation, which is the last point, we meant co-creation, so the concrete development of pilot project as critically testing change, in the sense of really trying to understand which were the challenges, for instance, that institutions were facing when trying to develop projects. For instance, here you can see the project on public space that we developed in the case of Milan. So really trying to test a little project on public space, we really faced were able to create this kind of working platform in which all the different actors were able to share their challenges and also their abilities of doing things. And I have to, and I come to the very last point, which is about space, but also narratives and representations, because for us, for instance, in our case, space was a really important device in order to really activate in an inclusive way, let's say, the different actors involved, because somehow space is a platform. It is a platform that really enables different competencies, very different competencies, to come out and to talk to each other. So the competence of people living in the neighborhood, but also the ones of institutions that I was mentioning, and the ones of us as professionals, but also the dimension of new narratives. It's really important and meaningful for us. So for instance, the project that was developed in Brussels about digital storytelling on the neighborhood, because somehow also new narratives are able to produce this change and transition that I was mentioning at the beginning. So to conclude, I invite you to check on our website, because we are going to publish our final report and guidelines very soon. And I hope that these documents will be of interest for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena. Before we go, now you touched upon a very interesting or very relevant aspects of urban living labs, which we maybe discuss later on. You also mentioned the co-learning, the co-design, which was essentially in the project, or where urban living labs can be translating or bringing together different knowledges. And you saw your role as a broker in between all these knowledges, bringing it together and co-creating. I think this hopefully links very well to the next presentations as well. So with that, we go across the Atlantic. We go to Brazil. 1 second, I'm already again lost here on my computer. Sorry for that. So the next presentation is from Marcus Roca. Marcus is the head of science, technology, and innovation of Florianopolis City Hall. If you do not know where Florianopolis is, I suggest you Google that and look at the pictures of Florianopolis, because then you know where you want to go for your next holidays. Having said that, Marcus will introduce the Florianopolis Living Lab. Marcus, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you, everyone. Well, I'll just share my screen very quickly. Just a second. Over here, sharing my screen, and also putting into presentation mode. So I'll be talking about the Florianopolis Living Lab. For those ones who doesn't know, Florianopolis is the capital of the state of Santa Catarina. It's down south of Brazil. For someone who loves tennis, is the city where Gustavo Kirten, we called Guga over here, a very famous tennis player in the last decade. He was born here in Florianopolis, a very famous character over here also. So in order to provide some context about the Florianopolis Living Lab, I'll present you very briefly the Florianopolis network of innovation centers, because it was launched in January of 2018, 2 years roughly, by the municipality of Florianopolis in a partnership with an organization called ACATI, is the Association of Tech Companies from Santa Catarina State. And that was made by the Municipal Fund for Innovation, because Florianopolis, since 2017, I was responsible for implementing the municipal law for innovation in Florianopolis City. We managed to be the first capital of a state in Brazil to have its own municipal law for innovation. And one of the mechanisms that we have in that law is the Municipal Fund for Innovation. So we had 4 facilities, 4 innovation habitats, and we foster through some resources from the Municipal Fund for Innovation in order to provide a unique, not a unique, but a standard model that the government of the state of Santa Catarina provided, so we can have also a state level network of innovation centers. In Florianopolis, we managed to have 4 innovation centers working as a network. And according to that model, we have some mandatory functions that should be performed in those habitats, in those facilities. So And we have, of course, innovation promotion office, co-working spaces, pre-incubators, incubators, accelerators, etc. But I wanted to highlight that it's mandatory to have urban living lab because of the impact of those facilities in the communities, in the urban space also. And some pictures about what is happening. Those are environments and facilities with a lot of energy, a lot of people, a lot of innovation going on. Florianópolis is right now the city in Brazil with the biggest density of startups. It's a blooming innovation ecosystem. And it's important to highlight also, in each one of those innovation centers, we have an innovation promotion office. It's an office with a one-stop shop concept that provides reception, orientation, and supporting for entrepreneurs. So we can provide information about the ecosystem with an observatory. We can provide information about funding, finding people to work with the company, legal knowledge, taxation details, and etc. So some indicators about this network since 2018 until February of this year. And of course, with the pandemics, the whole operation was harmed. We needed to switch a lot of operations 100% online from day to night, in 24 hours actually. But considering the presential, the face-to-face interactions, we can mention and highlight 351 events organized by the network itself, official events, and involving almost and more than 7,500 people, almost 8,000 people. And of course, more than 6,000 non-official events that were promoted in those facilities. Also, of course, in those events, we could not manage to count how many people attended to each one, and also more than 1,300 companies benefited from the entire work. And I also wanted to highlight almost 400 entrepreneurs helped by those offices as one-stop shop facilities. So one of the functions, as I mentioned you, is the Living Lab. So we started the work for the Living Lab Florianópolis in order to provide a space so startups can develop and validate innovative solutions for urban problems using the city as a lab, as a test bed. So we consider our innovation ecosystem, so everyone was involved. The government, of course, not only the city level, the municipality, but also the state level government and some federal institutions too, the citizens, the academics, companies and startups, and also the organized society. So all those actors, the entire ecosystem was involved in order to build, to co-create, and to operate the Living Lab. And the objectives were to test a product in a real environment, validate the target market for those startups and their solutions, to provide some certification for public administration so they have some kind of a document that can prove that those innovative solutions work actually in the urban environment, and they can provide some competitive advantage for public purchases. We can also showcase the validated solutions in the Living Lab. The business cases can be used as a promoting content and marketing effort for validated solutions. We can also spread and promote the culture of innovation among the citizens in the city. The citizens themselves can interact with those tech solutions and also strengthen the entire tech hub. So that being said, we started with a pilot project of the Living Lab in a street in downtown. It's called the Vidal Ramos Street. And we gave the name Smart Vidal Ramos, with all those companies and entities participating of that project. This is the street itself. It's a very beautiful place in downtown. It's very strong for commerce, for living. We have some habitations, lots of apartments. We have a lot of business and commerces. It's a very rich regions, but of course with some challenges, not only about mobility, but also about some public security issues that we had there. So we started to make this pilot project, and with the success of that project, we managed to build our methodology. And I would like to thank Professor José Piqué from Barcelona. He gave us the methodology that we started with in order to adapt that methodology, use it in Barcelona. So we brought the methodology, adapted to our reality, and started with that framework that I'm showing you in my screen. With the initial definitions, we mapped the areas of interest, all the stakeholders that should be involved. We built the entire structure of the project and the business model. We provided a public call. We got 30 different proposals for testing in Florianopolis Living Lab for the first semester of 2019 from last year. The public call was published in November, and the selection got placed during December and January. So after the selection, I told you 30 projects, 30 proposals were submitted, and then we selected 9 of them. So in the first semester of 2018, we made the implementation and the testing itself of the pilot projects. And then the successful pilot projects, we gave them a diploma, a document that they could use later. So our focus areas in that first cycle of the Florianopolis Living Lab were very diverse. We talked about water, energy, and environment, of course, more in the sustainability, safety, public administration, tourism and creative economy, mobility, healthcare, and commerce. And those are the companies and startups that were selected. And the green ones, they were certified and recommended for scalability. And the yellow ones, of course, they were certified because they managed to fulfill the criteria, but the solution itself, it was not validated. For example, Mobilis, it's a company from Florianopolis, and they make an electric car, very small electric car. They wanted to validate if that car should be useful and suitable for the municipal police of Florianopolis. The problem was in the second day of usage of that car, we stopped the testing because the car was starting to fall apart. It was not suitable at all. But the company itself, they provided all the information. The test was very well performed. The project was very well managed, but unfortunately the solution was not suitable for the usage, and that was not validated. And I may say those are some photos about the project. They were very diverse solutions that we tested and validated. I may return one slide. Sigmize is very interesting solution for mobility, sensor for counting and monitoring vehicle traffic and parking spaces. They provided a very important information for mobility because Florianopolis, the majority of the city territory is located in an island. And we actually have one bridge for getting into the island and another bridge to getting out of the island. So it's very hard to manage the urban mobility here. Recently, we have a third bridge that was inaugurated. It was under a restoration process, but it's a very small one, so it's very complicated. So Sigmize provided a very strong, a very mature technology to count the vehicles that were trafficking that were passing in those bridges. So Menage Bem is a platform to assist urban and peri-urban farmers, very important for providing food, providing some urban forests and so on. Smart Green is this automation for measuring, cutting, and reclosing of electric power and intelligent public lighting. Wi-Fi was an internet hotspot provider, but we should not pay for the access because we have access to publicity for some ads. And we have Participact. It was a municipal collaborative platform, so citizens can inform the problems of the city. Can Do, it was a very interesting platform for electronic security for housing. And Run Club was a platform to provide some services for sporting events, because Florianopolis is the city in Brazil that promotes for triathlon events. It's the city in the country that people they practice sports a lot. So that being said, the business case of Sigmize I was telling you, those are the photos of the bridges and the photos of the sensors, and then the dashboard that they provided to us, we could see how many cars per minute, per lane, per bridge that were getting out and getting into the city. So it was very rich information, helped out a lot for urban mobility planning. Those are the companies involved and their people. And also we made an event in order to give to them the certifications so they can use later for scalability and prove that their solutions actually work in a public and urban environment. So this year in the pandemic, of course, harmed a lot our process. So we didn't manage to have the Living Lab public call this year. But at the beginning of next year, we'll see, once it's safe for everyone, we're providing a new public call, and we'll be focusing in only one subject, urban mobility. So all of the entire solutions that we'll be selecting will be focused, they must be focused on urban mobility. That is our Facebook channel, and also some QR codes so you can check our website and also that Facebook's channel I showed you. So it's a very practical approach for Urban Lab. It was very interesting to see some theoretical, some approach and see some experience from Europe. And here I just share with you this experience in Florianopolis, also based on the best practice, the theoretical knowledge, but putting into a practice and show you some real results. And we hope to have better results and to replicate that model that we tested here in Florianopolis in other cities, not only in Santa Catarina state, but also in the entire country. So Johannes, thank you very much. The floor is yours again.
Thank you so much, Marcus, for giving us an introduction to the Florianopolis Living Lab. It also shows, it's very interesting, as it is, as your presentation showed, that local governments and municipalities really can take up this urban living lab approaches and this experimenting with jointly developing with business and the community and developing pathways towards a sustainable future. This was very interesting. Also, how you presented that you see technology in this urban living labs as an enabler, and have a look at what are the effects on the community and on the city as such. Very interesting presentation. Thank you so much. Before we go on to our last presentation, once more, I would like to share the Menti poll with you, the logins, where we ask you a couple of questions which help us to steer the discussion after the last presentation. And I was told that the code was shown too shortly before. So here again, please go to menti.com, type in the number 5482132, and you will transfer to a Menti poll. If you're watching this on YouTube or on the YouTube recording, this poll will be open for the next 2 weeks. Also, if this, if you're watching the recording, you can still participate in this poll. Good. 1 second. So, with that, I would like to link that to our last intervention of today, and we stay in Florianopolis. With us today is Tatjana Schreiner, who's a researcher at the Santa Catarina Federal University, carrying out capacity building activities at the SUDERV. And she's working on collaborative initiatives for integrated urban development in the south of Brazil. Tatjana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Johannes, and thank you all for the opportunity to be here. I'd just like to announce before I share my screen that I'm having some issues on unstable internet connection. So if in the middle of it I get down, don't worry, that will be back up again real soon. So just to let you know that might happen, as it has been happening. Right, so let's jump to the presentation and get into, I don't want you here, present mode. Good. So yeah, I would like to share a little bit more about collaborative initiatives for an integrated urban development plan in the south of Brazil. So again, we are talking about Florianopolis, but now on a wider range of territory, that is the Florianopolis metropolitan area. This is comprised by 9 municipalities. So we are talking about over a million inhabitants. And basically, it is a region that we have the highest human development index in the country. Basically, as Marcos was saying before, because of the fact that Florianopolis is an island and is quite protected. I mean, most of its territory is in an island. Over here, we have just a bit of its part in a continent. Basically, the economic activities in the island are innovation and ICT companies going on, and tourism and services. Whereas the industrial pole is being developed in the conurbation area to Florianopolis continental area here. And the remaining 6 other municipalities are pretty much covered with rural areas. So this is just to say how different the contexts are between this metropolitan region, which was funded in the late 90s, actually created. And this is the logo we created for the metropolitan region. And basically the purpose was to make a delimitation of this territory to organize specific themes as urban mobility, basic sanitation, and land management. But only in 2014 that SUDEF, that is this state level autarky, was actually funded to promote, develop, and start planning the regional development plan for the region. So till there, nothing was really happening. And now we do, because of SUDEF, we do have a collective decision-making body formed by these 9 municipalities and the state. And supporting that, that body, we have another one that is called the CODEF, that is the Development Committee, which is now formed by the 9 municipalities, the state, the university, and also representatives of civil society. So organizations that are linked to this theme, such as lawyers, architects, and engineers, administrators, bus companies. So what does this committee do? They execute projects to unify the services of common interest, and also start studying about how to create policy guidelines, development, performance index, and criteria to service providers. So how they have been doing this? But this is a very initial phase, I must say, because this is a whole building up process. But we have been doing through thematic chambers to discuss, study, and plan. So right now we have developed these basic 4 thematic chambers, the water management one, economic development, land management, and urban mobility. We have once a week meeting with one of each area. So we have these monthly meetings for each area in order to build this a cohesive network, because if we don't have that capacity of having people understanding what we have to do together, and that starts from getting information out of the municipalities. Most of the municipalities don't know what's going on there. So there is a task force in place on these municipalities trying to gather information, and from this information we start benchmarking on integrated urban planning to start understanding how we're going to fit this, how we're going to start to structure terms of reference for integrated development plan. And we are also with the Ancina hooked up in the social development goals. So this is a very innovative thing that we are trying to do. Right, but also this is not something that we do from night to day. It's not like a very easy thing to do, as most of you are aware already. Why? Because we have different perceptions on common interest. So as I was saying before, we've got these different context within the region. So we started to make, well, there was not many, but this first workshop was an interesting initiative in order to understand how far and how much we have to work on this, which is to start discussing the interdependence between state and municipalities. Because initially municipalities stand too much on the idea and the concept and in the law that says that they have got the autonomy to do so, but they don't have either the capacity, nor the money, nor the conditions to tackle problems and complex problems such as urban mobility. That's one of the first projects in actually what's happening in the Florianopolis metropolitan area. So we are starting with the transportation because it's a chaos in the region, actually one of the worst in the country. So we are tackling theme by theme, but our goal is to actually develop this general urban development project. So trying to balance between the different stakeholders' interests and the population's needs. So we have to go from the municipalities to the ground and talk to people, go back and get into the state and trying to mix what the needs are and our realities are. So, and trying to develop the idea that the benefits of what is the shared planning and focus on effectiveness of this initiative. Well, actually not initiative, but way of doing things. Also, cooperation with federal government and international organizations is something else that we have been doing and helping a lot. So we have done with the federal government a very comprehensive study on the mobility, and that is sort of the backbone of the whole project of integration of public transportation going on at the moment. That project was got a prize from GIZ, and they were helping us in a sense of introducing less polluting buses and making the project more robust for sustainable socioeconomic development. And very recently we got, we're still developing a project with the Global Environment Facility to promote the integration of the metropolitan planning and innovative investments in the region. And this last project, we are in the phase, well, they are based on three main components. That's the digital platform for integrated planning, that's the biodiversity plans and green area policies, and the urban qualification plan to reduce emissions, including a living lab pilot that is connected to what Marcus was presenting before. And we are still on a proposal basis, but we've done a workshop with the community and quadruple helix engaged, where 96 representatives of all this local government, academia, civil society gather recommendations and synergies to the project. So we are at this point right now, trying different ways and in order to make this happen. But we know that this is not like a very fast track, but it's very worth it. And we have already been seeing some very good outcomes out of it. So I hope to be sharing more outcomes with you later on in a couple of years. And thank you very much for the opportunity here.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. One of your last comments, or one of your last sentences, were very interesting. Where you said that yeah, it's not a fast track, but it's very worth it. I think this links very well to what Jonas presented at the very beginning, where he had the graphic with this little detour with the +1, and it very much adds up to that. Thank you so much for your presentations. We are now at the last part of this session, where we would like to, or I would like to have a look with you at the Mentimeter, and then start a discussion from the questions which were contributed, or questions and comments which were contributed to the by the Mentimeter. 1 second, and I would also like to encourage Jonas and Marcus to switch on your cameras. Then we can start the discussion part of this session. Hi, Jonas. Good. So we had a couple of questions here. So what are the biggest urban challenges in your cities? We see that there's a wide variety of answers. It's urban mobility, pollution, climate change effects, decreasing social cohesion, lack of participatory processes. There's one question which we come back later in the discussion part, transportation, floods, and informal occupation. I think there's a lot of comments in there, and maybe the panelists can reflect on that then, where urban living labs approaches or experimental approaches would be appropriate to address them. We also asked the participants, can you, by the way, see my screen? I hope you can. Yes, good. If you could change anything in your city, town, what would it be? So we have a wish list here from education, public space, it comes a couple of times, urban mobility, government, more green areas, governance, participation, cycling infrastructure, water quality, healthy food, mobility, traffic, so less private cars. So a lot on public spaces connected to mobility issues, accessibility issues, more walking areas. Yeah, very interesting. Thanks for everybody contributing to that. We also ask, how experienced are you with urban living labs? So we have an average of a third, 32%, which is good. Someone is very experienced here. I'm a pro and working with them, while a couple of never heard of them. I hope we could get you into the mood to start urban living labs, so get you in the spirit and see the advantage of urban living labs, and you're excited about that by now. We also ask, do you think urban living labs would be helpful for addressing the urban challenges in your cities? I have to say we have to take 2 counts off from the yes, because there was something wrong with the slide first, which I changed. So we have 6 yes and 2, okay, 7 yeses and 2 maybes, so which is good. Nobody thinks it's useless. And then at the last part, we also ask the participants to for comments, reflections, and questions to the panel and what has been presented. And I would like to start with this one. How can we include more the community in urban living lab experiences? How the mutual work between institutions and communities, so how does it work? What do we expect to learn from the living labs that could improve the quality of life in urban environments? And I think this question would be very interesting for the Solap project. So I would like to direct that to Elena to answer.
Yes, well, it's a very complex question, but I will try to somehow give some insights from our experience. In the Solap, as I was saying in my presentation, we were working in large-scale social housing estates, so places in which it was very important and meaningful to include the community, but in which it was quite challenging. So from our experience, being on site, as I was saying in the presentation, so really trying to build daily relationships with the people living in it and working in it was really a key factor to help us involving people then in the process of the urban living lab. And also, as I was saying, developing pilot projects was very meaningful way to engage communities and institutions to work together. So we really tried to build platforms which helped us to test little solutions. I have to say it's in a little scale, of course, but we were quite successful in trying to really manage this relationship that was mentioned in the question about institutions and communities.
Thank you, Elena. Another question directly directed to Marcus. What are the pros and cons in focusing the activities on innovative business solutions as opposed to activities spearheaded by the city government?
Well, I may highlight at first the pros. The pros is to reduce a lot the time between the searching and developing a solution and putting in testing and validating it into a practical and real environment. So that is the main pro that we have doing and performing the Living Lab approach. We can select very quickly, focusing on the problem instead of focusing the solution that would be the traditional way of buying technology and buying innovation in a state level. So we can, using Living Labs, we can, of course, we can improve the timing and, of course, the benefit for the entire society. The con is to, it's more like a challenge, because the challenge is to involve the entire society and also to involve not only the local ecosystem, but other ecosystems from the entire country and even from international ecosystems in order to have the best solution brought to the city and tested and validated into the city. I may say that those two parts, the good part is to have a smaller amount of time in order to find and to test and validate the solution. And the negative and challenging side is to guarantee the biggest amount of competition to provide the solutions. And I may highlight in Brazil, right now we are in the process of approving a federal law for startups. And one of the articles of that law focus on a very important issue for the entire state level and government entities in Brazil is the purchasing. We're very bureaucratic here, and the problem is we don't have until now we don't have a mechanism to buy innovation considering a problem when we don't know the solution. The purchasing, the public purchasing in Brazil, the entire bidding process, etc., is based on the knowledge about an existing solution. So innovation is about creating solutions. So it's kind of hard to buy solution here in Brazil. So we can perform a Living Lab here, have good results. We have a scalability strategy, but we cannot put into practice because the law right now doesn't allow the government to make that purchase considering the problem that was solved. That being said, in order to finish my line of thinking, well, with this new law, we can manage to have more purchasing from the government side to innovative solutions from startups. That's what we hope for.
Thank you, Marcus. I have another question directly to Tatiana. What were the main bottlenecks for collaboration in the development of the lab in the metropolitan area? Citizens, government, academia, all the above?
Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty much all the above, because each one has got its constraints of many different aspects. Say, in respect to citizens, we don't have, this is not a culture that we have. I guess someone put a comment on that, like not believing in citizens and participation. And somehow this is changing, but let's say that culture-wise, this is not something that has been, that's not part of our history, to be participating and going to the forums and getting interested in what I can do for my neighborhood, my city, and contribute and go after the politician that I voted to ask for him to what they were saying that the campaign is putting forth or not. So this is not, this would be more like getting to know your city and getting to know that the citizen is part of it. this is something academia, in a way, it's getting, I mean, our participation in this project is getting stronger and getting more connected to what is actually happening in reality. So one of the criticisms about academia participation is that it's too far away from reality, and it's like in a bubble. This is sort of what people would say that academia behaves like, and this is changing. And I think proof of that is us being involved in the development of this project. And government-wise, well, we have many issues in this area to start tackling one by one, and it does go through the capacity building that we were talking before, and this is like a very step-by-step process, and also the political interests that get in the way of making, for example, a public, the development of the integrated plan happening, because there is this whole conflict of interest in respect to what my municipality wants, and the polarity between views for a common project. So all of these things, all of these bottlenecks needs to be counted and seen and discussed in order to start working together. So each one has got little strategies really in order to start make the project flow.
Thank you, Tatiana. I would also like to post one question to all of you on the panel today, which is what do you think can be learned between Europe and Brazil in terms of living labs and sustainable urbanization in general? If you can, I would like to ask you for a brief comment, because we have to close in about 8 minutes. But if there is anything you think this is very interesting, we would like to explore that further, or you see the possibility to do that, please do so, because we might take that up in the ENRICH project, or then in the ENRICH in LAC and in JPI Urban Europe. Does anybody have a reflection on that?
I'm sorry, I guess I was a little bit cut in the middle of something.
Tatiana, if you didn't hear it, the question was, what can be learned across Europe and Brazil? What are issues where you think that where there is added value to this cooperation? What can be learned, or where is it beneficial to exchange knowledge?
I may say about the experience that we had here. I mentioned we used the methodology that was developed and tested in Barcelona, and we brought the methodology to Brazil, established a cooperation with the people there. Of course, the university was fundamental here. Tatiana is a member of one of the labs that we have in the knowledge engineering department in the Federal University of Santa Catarina. They actually are a think tank for smart cities, innovation ecosystem, and all related knowledge. And of course, Urban Living Labs it's within. So we had a very positive experience in order to exchange knowledge. Of course, the realities are different, because the challenges in Barcelona were completely different when comparing to the challenges that we have here in Florianopolis. But the methodology itself worked pretty well. We didn't have to change much of the methodology. That was the good part. And of course, the dialogue, the conversations, the cooperation, it worked very smoothly. It was very rich. Right now, we are talking a lot with them almost every month or every week. We have some kind of interaction with people there for different subjects. And even for the project that Tatiana submitted, we always ask them, and if they have some questions, they ask us too. So it's very rich, very, very important.
Thank you, Marcus. It also, what I liked about this comment, because it implies that it's not let's say, a good idea to use a technology and copy paste it from one place to another. But actually, it is beneficial to use the methodology to develop, taking into account the local context and the local communities. Yes. Berna, you had a comment.
Yes, very briefly. It is actually part of my final messages, but since it fits better here. So I see two opportunities here, or two reasons. One is European institutions obviously has a longer kind of a tradition of working together and making common practices through various initiatives. Horizon or European framework programs is being one of them. Cities collaborate. And together with the SDGs and corresponding national laws and strategies, this is, you know, increasing recently in the last years. So maybe that type of collaboration in the, you know, not only between Europe and Brazil, but also in a regional context in Latin America would be very useful, because there are organizations who support such initiatives in Latin America. So this might be a good reason to knock on the door. And the other thing, what Marcus has mentioned, they're going to open up a call, I heard, with regard to urban mobility. So you never know where the solution will come from. Yeah. So when you establish already the networks, and share the knowledge through various hubs, like ENRICH is being one of them, Urban Europe, GPI Urban Europe is another one. It is easy to get access to the potential solutions, wherever, from all over the world. We all have different networks, and we know that network is the key. We already have experience in the past together with Natura. We launched Innovation Challenge. Enriching Brazil launched its own innovation challenge on the sustainable challenges. So this might be very useful, but also referring to this federal law that should enable any company from anywhere to pitch their solutions. Actually, I think this is critical. Yeah.
Thank you, Berna. With that, Jonas, you anyway raised your hand, and I would like to ask you for this comment, and then also for a wrap up What do you make out? Not a wrap up, sorry. What do you make out of that? How does this resonate with the work in JPI Urban Europe?
I would say, well, of course, in JPI Urban Europe, we are very interested in kind of supporting the relations, links, collaborations between Brazil and European actors. We have been for some time, and we are kind of working on it. Hearing these examples, these different perspectives and ways of working with urban living labs, I think, yes, it's all the more strengthened if I give that. But I would also like to, I was just remembering when you were asking about the specific exchange between Brazil and European actors when it comes to urban living labs. I remember at the workshop we did in Rio de Janeiro 2 years ago now, time flies, where it was so obvious that the Brazilian actors were interested in this European concept of urban living labs, which of course it comes from MIT somehow, but it has been a European thing. But I was at pains in saying, no, we're very inspired by Brazil conceptual innovations like participatory budgeting in Porto Alegre 20 years ago or 20, 30 years ago. So there's been this constant exchange actually, or inspiration already. I think we're just building onwards on that, I hope.
Right, thank you. And that also that was also shown in our last webinar on the positive energy districts, where there was a very interesting case. We actually discussed how to generate or how to build neighborhoods which generate more energy than they use. And we had a very interesting input from I think it was also from Rio de Janeiro, where there was the case where how generating energy in the favelas can contribute to social benefits or to increase the living conditions in this place. It's very interesting. Biana, do you have anything to add to your last comment already? I think you already might have. No, all done. Very good. Your microphone is muted, but I think.
Sorry.
That's
No,
okay.
the major issues has been mentioned already. So yeah, it was such a pleasure to host this event and be part of it. And we're looking forward for the next events with the participation of interested stakeholders from both sides.
Right, thank you, Berna. And before we go, we are now at 2:01, so almost on time. I would like to just to the panelists, but to really everybody listening in, to show you a couple of opportunities to engage in the JPI Europe. So that is, if you're an international organization or if you're representing a ministry or a country and you're interested in the JPI Europe, please get in touch. We have a new program coming up, which will be where the efforts will be increased compared to JPI Europe even more. We have also a stakeholder community, which consists out of people, mainly Europe, but we have people from around the world, where we also now have online events, workshops, and so on. Get in touch if you're interested in that. We have a call coming up. Brazil is not taking part in this, but it might be interesting anyway for the Brazilians and for the Europeans for sure, called AeroNet Urban Transformation Capacities, which will open in January. And if you're just really interested in what's going on in JPI Europe, please feel free to subscribe to our newsletter, send me an email, or follow us on social media. Good. With that, we are through the program of today. I very much enjoyed the discussion. It's always a pleasure. It's always a very fruitful discussion with the Brazilian colleagues and friends. It's really, really good. Thank you, Berna and Laura, for making this possible. Thank you to all the speakers. We hope that in the new year, the situation will be a bit different and better, hopefully, so we can meet in person again. Maybe meet in person in Florianopolis, that would be very nice, or anywhere else. Otherwise, we just continue this online exchange. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Elena, Jonas, Tatiana, Biana, Laura. Thank you so much. Have a nice day, happy holidays, and a good year.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.